Chapter 444. The Fake. 9. Was it possible to be reduced to this state merely by her killing intent? Melkith rubbed her forearms. She could feel goosebumps. Despite her fear of recalling the moment, when she thought about it again, Melkith felt as if it had been more than simple killing intent. When their eyes met, something happened. How could she explain it? It wasn't an entirely unfamiliar feeling. She had experienced it once before. That's right, Melkith thought. It came back to her while she was still calming her pounding heart. Years back, when she first entered Akron, ascended to the top floor Sienna's hall, and saw witchcraft and the eternal hole for the first time, Melkith felt completely overwhelmed. She had felt as if she had beheld something transcendent, something not meant for her eyes, something beyond her comprehension and her current capacity. She had felt something similar in that brief moment she met Sienna's eyes. It wasn't just the killing intent that overwhelmed Melkith. Instead, for an instant, Melkith had glimpsed into the essence of the wizard called Sienna Meridian. That was what had caused her to crumple to the floor. Magic? Melkith pondered. Was it some kind of magic? He couldn't be sure. It had only been for the briefest of moments after all. What was clear, however, was that this arch-wizard, the wise Sienna, had transcended beyond Melkith's wildest expectations. While she was tumbling around in the sands, the wise Sienna must have pursued something to reach such heights. Still, I've made progress since then, Melkith reassured herself. She felt a sense of pride in herself, along with awe for Sienna. She fainted when she first came to Akron and saw witchcraft. But this time she managed to stay conscious. Though her legs had given out under her, she had avoided further embarrassment. Melkith cautiously lifted her head and looked forward. This was the top floor of Akron Sienna's hall. It was a place lined with the portraits of Sienna and Akasha, as well as her comrades from 300 years ago. Now several things had changed from before. Melkith observed Sienna, who was sitting in the main seat with her chin resting on her hand. "Sis, are you angry?" asked Melkith. No response came. Sienna kept gazing ahead, not even sparing a glance at Melkith. Melkith felt her heart pounding with anxiety as she spoke again. "Sis, it was really just a joke. Do you think I would seriously do that to you? It was just... That's right. I wanted to show you the latest prank trend since we haven't met for a long time. Yes. You wouldn't know being in Aroth, but in Nahama this kind of prank is trendy. Everyone from kids to the elderly enjoys it." It was a desperate and obviously flimsy explanation, but Melkith clung to it fervently. However, there was still no response. Lovelian kept glancing at Melkith from his seat near Sienna, but Melkith was too preoccupied to notice his gestures. "I've suffered so much in that scorching desert for you and Eugene. Yes, I know I was wrong. I won't play such pranks on you anymore. So please, sis, let go of your anger. Relax your face. Please respond to me," pleaded Melkith. "And who are they?" Melkith took notice of some unfamiliar faces in the midst of her desperate pleading. Among them were Harrington Carriage, the chief court wizard of Kiel, and Reinian Bors, the hermit. Though she had never met these two new arch-wizards, their presence in those seats clearly marked them as such. Kneeling on the floor while these juniors sit comfortably in chairs? Melkith thought indignantly. She couldn't believe the audacity. How could they remain sitting when she was on the ground? The least they could do was to stand. Despite boiling inside, Melkith maintained a servile smile. "Tis," she called out once more. "Ahem." Unable to bear it any longer, Lovelian loudly cleared his throat. Only then did Melkith turn her head to look in his direction. He met Melkith's gaze and immediately placed his index finger on his lips. Even in her distracted state, Melkith recognized this overt gesture. She stopped her jabbering and just pouted. "Quite impressive," Sienna finally spoke after a long period of silence. Her lips curved into a smile. She stretched out the hand that had been propped under her chin. "Is your mental strength exceptionally strong? Or is it a privilege of incarceration's dark power?" Balzac couldn't reply in his bound form midair. He managed to stay conscious, but that was the best he could do. Even relaxing in the slightest would have made him lose his mind. The gaze fixed on him was so fierce and powerful. It might be an odd comparison, but Balzac felt a power similar to the demon eye in Sienna's green irises. However, humans could not possess demonies. They were characteristics manifested only in some high-ranking demons. Therefore, he was sure this gaze was not a demon eye but magic. Even so, understanding it wasn't easy. Could magic artificially create such demonic charm? Sienna's eyes drew out many emotions from Balzac, including awe, admiration, and a sense of enchantment. But they all culminated in one thing: submission. Balzac rethought his position. Unknowingly, he had shattered his own frame of magic. Was such a thing possible with magic? That question itself was wrong. Nothing was impossible in magic. While Balzac himself might not be able to pursue or reach such a realm, she was the wise Sienna. She was the wizard whom all wizards respected, the wizard of wizards. Haha, Balzac chuckled involuntarily. He was worried that she might take this laughter as rudeness or insult, but now, having the freedom to speak, he couldn't help but laugh. How could he not laugh when he saw the figure he admired since childhood with his own eyes? My mental strength is not particularly strong. It's more likely due to the power of His Majesty, the Demon King of Incarceration, Balzac answered. Presumptuous. Sienna's eyebrows twitched. Calling the Demon King of Incarceration His Majesty in front of me, of all people. I understand it's disrespectful, but I can't help it, retorted Balzac. He wouldn't punish his minions for not using honorifics, would he? Countered Sienna. I also believe, Lady Sienna, that you would understand a humble person's need to be cautious in their speech, said Balzac. Everyone was surprised at Balzac's response. It was especially true for Herodotus, the Blue Tower Master. He had known Balzac since their youth and he felt restless. He respected and admired Sienna, but on a separate note. Sometimes Sienna could be incredibly emotional. What if Sienna genuinely felt offended by his words and killed Balzac? Who could stop that? Moreover, it wouldn't be wrong if Sienna killed Balzac. He was a black wizard contracted with the Demon King of Incarceration. As such, he was an inevitable enemy and could never be an ally. Right? Sienna smirked while moving her finger. She drew a circle towards Balzac with her index finger. I can understand completely. Balzac Ludbeth, master of the Black Tower. You know, I simply can't harbor any good feelings towards black wizards, especially those contracted with the Demon King. I understand, he answered. I believe I have the right to kill you. You might feel it's unfair, but that's not my concern, Sienna said. I understand, Balzac responded. But I won't kill you, Sienna stated. Swoosh. The magic binding Balzac disappeared. Sienna watched Balzac fall to the ground before continuing. I won't kill you. I've heard about you several times. From the Red Tower Master, the Blue Tower Master, and, of course, from my proud and beloved disciple Eugene. Balzac Ludbeth, I heard you treated my disciple very well. It's a question I find difficult to answer myself, responded Balzac. I heard you played a significant role in the Sommer Forest. Without you, things could have gotten very troublesome, continued Sienna. I simply did what had to be done, Balzac said. Such an answer feels too cliché, Sienna interjected. Balzac smiled awkwardly at her words. When he didn't continue, Sienna chuckled with her arms crossed, saying, I like your aspiration. At the mention of aspiration, Balzac's expression stiffened slightly. Unsure whether his upcoming expression was a smile or a tear, even Balzac couldn't tell. Perhaps it was both. You want to become a legend? The greatest wizard in the world. A wizard like me who will be remembered in the history of magic for hundreds of years, asked Sienna. Yes, responded Balzac. I heard you were once a promising wizard in the Blue Tower, even considered for the position of the next Tower Master. I heard about why you formed a contract with the Demon King and became a black wizard, continued Sienna. Because I am not you, Lady Sienna. Balzac composed himself before answering. The wise Sienna was loved by magic. She was a wizard who could threaten the Demon Kings. No wizard like her had appeared since. Balzac was not Sienna. Once he thought himself a genius, beloved by magic, capable of becoming a legend. But reality betrayed his expectations. That was why he became a black wizard, to become a great wizard, to leave his name in the annals of the history of magic. I do not think my choice was wrong. I had ideals that I couldn't reach with my potential. To walk that path, I had to sign a contract with the Demon King of Incarceration, explained Balzac. Most wizards dreamt of becoming the greatest wizards in their youth. But as they aged and faced reality, dreams changed. They compromised or gave up. Balzac chose compromise over surrender. I have a few things to ask you, said Sienna. Her face lost its smile as her eyes calmly settled on Balzac. I heard your aspiration is pure and earnest. And your obsession. You want to remain purely human and become a legend. she asked. Yes. As I am a human, answered Balzac. Can you swear it? Sienna stood up. She slowly approached Balzac, continuing, I won't force you. Even if you don't swear, I won't kill you right now. Since you've contracted with the demon king of incarceration, there will come a time when I must kill you. I understand, Balzac answered after a moment. If you cannot swear, then I'll consider you as just a black wizard. It won't bother me too much. But I would prefer you to disappear from my sight right now, Sienna said. What happens if I swear? Asked Balzac. I think your aspiration is splendid, said Sienna. If you're truly pursuing it and prove your sincerity with a vow, then I will consider you not just a black wizard but a wizard. I will swear. Balzac didn't hesitate. He placed his hand on his chest, infusing his words with magic and mana. I will never abandon my humanity. Only after hearing his vow did Sienna finally give a sly smile. She stopped in front of Balzac. He was still sitting on the ground. I will surpass humanity, declared Sienna. Balzac felt the same transcendence in Sienna's eyes as before. The light swirling in her eyes created stars. Her eyes, twirling with light, formed galaxies. Balzac looked at Sienna with a stunned expression. She wasn't joking. He shuddered and nodded. Yes. I won't involve you in research. The demon king of incarceration might use you to spy, Sienna continued. Though I don't think he would do such a thing. But yes, I understand, responded Balzac. He was disappointed, but Balzac didn't ask for more. His aspiration was acknowledged. He heard the words that he wasn't just a black wizard but a wizard. To Balzac, these words were as precious as salvation. I thought I could be of help with the Nahama issue, Lady Sienna, said Balzac. I received the memories extracted from Harperon. Not much help, though, came Sienna's response. So it seemed, said Balzac before glancing outside to the vampire familiars. I thought I had identified all vampire clans active in Arath. Seems like I was mistaken, he admitted. Bender. You probably did, Sienna chuckled, also looking outside. The vampire watching the meeting at Akron and spying on Sienna belonged to the Odoth clan. But at some point the owner of the gaze changed. To act or ignore. Should she look into it or leave them untouched? But before she could come to a decision, the vampires dared to reach out first. Betrayal. Though contemptible, there was no need to refuse when enemies betrayed each other and offered information. Thanks to this, Sienna knew what was happening in the depths of Nahama. She knew which demons had crossed over as well as what was being prepared. Sis. Melkith pleaded pitifully, seeing Sienna chuckle. If you're acknowledging a black wizard, can't you do the same for me? Don't call me sis, Miss Melkith, Sienna snapped coldly. Melkith crawled on her knees to Sienna's feet, clinging to her legs. Sis, how can you do this to me? Sis, please, I worked so hard for you. Shall we go outside? Asked Sienna. Sis, I already told you it was all a joke. Why would I go outside with you? Melkith wailed while shaking Sienna's leg. Sienna considered kicking her away but sighed. After all, Melkith had struggled in the desert for almost a year. If you mess around one more time, Sienna warned. Never again. Sis, but what was that earlier? The thing that made me fall. No matter how much I think about it, it felt like magic. Is it your new signature? Asked Melkith. It's a secret, was Sienna's answer. It was still incomplete, so Sienna wasn't ready to boast about it yet. As I thought. I never imagined in my wildest dreams such magic existed, said Balzac. Right. It was like Sis herself became magic. That's what it felt like, Melkith chimed in. Sienna didn't respond, but Balzac and Melkith continued speculating about her signature. Listening to their guesses, Sienna's lips curled up, her shoulders shrugged, and her chest puffed out with pride. Chapter 445, Remains 1. The Queen of the Night Demons, Norgiabella, didn't dream. More precisely, she couldn't. There was almost nothing she couldn't achieve in reality. Even the seemingly impossible tasks could be attained with a little effort or trouble. Still, there were times she yearned to enjoy dreams, but even then Noor didn't dream in her sleep. For her, creating and enjoying others' dreams was much easier and more convenient than dreaming in her own sleep. Despite being known as the Queen of the Night Demons, she couldn't dream her own true dream, one that she wouldn't realize was a dream until she woke up. So she wanted to experience a dream. Such were the thoughts she had entertained at one time. Unfortunately, such dreams weren't something she could have just by making a wish. Had she ever felt regret about that? He wasn't sure. Such sentiments were somewhat foreign to Noir. She pondered. It was the same now. She sat in the middle of her vast bed and blinked in contemplation. It was a bed large enough for dozens of people. Just because she didn't dream did not mean she did not sleep. Although a demon of her caliber no longer needed to sleep, nor chose to sleep daily for a set duration. Although she didn't need to sleep, she didn't feel the need to skip sleep either. She fell in thought while playing with her tousled hair. She could not be entirely sure since this was her first time experiencing it, but she wondered if she had just dreamed her first ever dream. Felt like a dream. He felt as if this was what dreaming would be like, a dream that one could not remember. Her memories vanished the moment she woke up from her sleep, and only faint emotions had been left behind. What was it? She murmured, trying to recall what she saw while wrapping herself in the blankets. Failing to recapture the dream, she lay down again after rolling around on her bed. She had heard about this sensation from those who regularly dreamed in their sleep. What she felt was the lingering desire to continue an unfinished dream. Even though she had already woken up, she wanted to close her eyes and fall asleep. She wanted to continue where she had left off. So she closed her eyes and invited sleep. She didn't need to try hard and easily slipped back into deep sleep. But only dozens of minutes after she started to breathe peacefully in deep slumber, her eyes suddenly opened. "It's not working," Noor commented. She realized she hadn't dreamed anything. Moreover, she tried to consciously create a dream in her sleep but couldn't capture the same feeling. In the first place, she had fallen asleep hoping for a continuation of her previous dream, but she couldn't even remember what dream she had dreamt. The faint emotions were all that remained. "What was it?" she repeated while emerging from the blankets. Her hair became more disheveled as she tossed and turned, trying to grasp the fading feelings. She once again contemplated the disappearing emotions. She could not remember the contents of the dream. The lingering emotions were they sorrow, longing, or regret? She felt that they must have been such poignant emotions. "Is it the season?" she joked to herself. "The season?" Noor gave a hollow laugh as she climbed out of her bed. She tidied her hair and recreated her horns, which she had removed while sleeping. Noor tried to shake off the emotions and brush them off, but they stubbornly clung to her. The feelings, initially faint, had sunk deep into her heart. She couldn't get it out of her head. What was the dream about? She thought hard while staring into the mirror but couldn't recall anything. Frustrated, she touched her face, tapped her temple and ruffled her neatly combed hair. Then suddenly she noticed her necklace and the ring on her left ring finger. She never took them off, not even while sleeping, though she slept naked. For the past month they had been her constant companions. She hummed. Remembering the night that stretched into daybreak and dawn, representing the sweet memories, emotions and reminiscences, she felt a sweet fluttering in her heart. She stretched out her left hand. The ring on her white, slender finger shone brightly. After observing the ring on her finger for a moment, she raised the other ring intertwined with her necklace. Noor Giabella, that was the name engraved on the inside of the ring. Noor placed the ring on her fingers while feeling the thump in her heart. This was the ring that would one day be worn by Hamel as he breathed his last. The ring was meant to fit Hamel's ring finger perfectly, and it was too large for even Noir's thumb. Large hands, she thought, recalling Hamel's, or rather Eugenie's robust fingers. His hands could completely envelop hers. She giggled while playfully waving her hand. "I miss you," Noir murmured while summoning a holographic screen midair. The screen displayed the water park at Adventure Square, where Eugene sat under a parasol, his face unmistakably sullen. Even through the screen, it was evident that he didn't want to be there and had been dragged along by the children. "Is it time to leave?" Noor wondered. It had been a month since Eugene arrived at Giabella Park. The situation in Nahama had changed. Though not announced openly, Noor knew Nahama was on the brink of war. The Sultan must have decreed it, but Amelia Merwin, hidden away in Ravesta, was the true force behind it. Since that dawn, Noor hadn't visited Eugene. She did not want to dilute the intense emotions she felt while watching the sunrise with him or make their memories seem trivial by visiting too often. She did not want new emotions to cover up what she had felt back then. Her airborne mansion, Giabella Face, was already en route to the water park. Noir smiled at her reflection in the mirror. Her task until arrival was to choose a swimsuit. It was truly a delightful dilemma. Fwoosh, fwoosh. The wave pool was aptly named for its ocean-like waves. Though the pool was wide like the ocean with ocean-like waves, that didn't mean it was actually the ocean. In Eugenie's eyes, the wave pool was a devilish fun attraction that combined the best aspects of the sea while leaving out the negatives. The relentless waves, rising and falling, were simple yet not merely simple. They were thrilling, especially when combined with tubes and rafts. It was an attraction that truly drove the kids wild with excitement. Kaiwa. Hioa. Look at that, Eugene thought as he observed Rhaimira and Mare riding a raft. The two were screaming with excitement. Christina was trying her best not to scream. This was the first time she had experienced such entertainment, and she was clearly having the time of her life sandwiched between the two girls. Her expression was quite reflective of her feelings. It could well be Anise, Eugene mused. She had been playing with the children for a while under the guise of looking after them. It was clear Anise was enjoying the pool as well. Why was she restraining herself? He pondered while opening a bottle of alcohol on the table beside the sunbed. They were in a private pool area which Mare and Rhaimira had reserved of their own accord. Only Eugenie's group was present in the nearby area. So, you decided to leave Balzac alone for now? Eugene asked. Yes, responded Sienna. The wind was carrying Sienna's voice back and forth. Initially they had conversed through Mare, but after Melkith returned to Aroth, they didn't need to always converse through Mare. The wind spirit that Melkith summoned was staying near Sienna and acting as a transponder. As such, they could hold a conversation even when Mare was busily occupied. Apart from being a black wizard, I quite like him, continued Sienna. But everything he does is suspicious, retorted Eugene. Wizards are supposed to be somewhat suspicious. That's what makes them mysterious and fascinating, explained Sienna. Oh, sure thing. But you don't have anything like that, do you? Eugene pointed out. I'm sure I'm very suspicious and mysterious in others' eyes, said Sienna. Eugene didn't think so, but he refrained from expressing the doubts circulating in his mind. He wasn't surprised by Sienna's fondness of Balzac. He had guessed as much, knowing Balzac's aspiration. In fact, Eugene wasn't much different from Sienna. Eugene, too, had softened his stance towards Balzac after learning of his wish to become a legend, a great wizard, while remaining human without turning into a demon or something else. That wish had struck a chord with Eugene. The only reason Eugene still kept his distance from Balzac and found him suspicious was the fact that Balzac was ultimately a black wizard. Moreover, he was a black wizard contracted with the Demon King of Incarceration, an entity that would absolutely become Eugenie's enemy one day. The Demon King of Incarceration won't start a fight before you ascend Babel. And I don't think he'd use a black wizard contracted with him to plan any schemes, declared Sienna. He wouldn't need to, Eugene agreed. The Demon King of Incarceration had no need for such tactics. The Demon King of Incarceration might not, but Balzac himself might have other ideas, Eugene remarked. You're worrying about me, aren't you, Eugene? That's because you haven't seen me recently. I'm telling you that I'm something else entirely nowadays. Eugene knew about Sienna's recent preoccupation with developing a new signature. He wasn't privy to the details, but her tone suggested significant progress. I get it. You're capable. But still be careful, you never know, Eugene warned Sienna. Is it because of Balzac's signature? Questioned Sienna. Didn't you neglect to even properly ask about his signature? Isn't that a bit careless? Eugene challenged. It's about respecting him as a wizard, retorted Sienna. Respect? Just hearing about it sounds suspicious. What kind of signature feeds on demons? What if he turns on you later? Eugene asked. How did you act, Eugene, when Anise, Christina and I worried about you like this, with all of these hypothetical, just-in-case questions? Sienna asked, sounding annoyed. Eugene fell silent at her retort. He found no answer, which prompted Sienna to click her tongue in response before saying, Look at this cowardly bastard shutting up now. When it's about himself, he's all serious and claims he'll handle it fine. Even when I show concern, you go nuts. Eugene caught himself mid-sentence. He recalled Sienna saying something similar. He shuddered, realizing he was acting exactly like or somewhat like Sienna, even if just a little. The thought of resembling this cheeky, petulant lady was absurd. He felt chills run down his back. Still, taking him to Nahama seems a bit much, Eugene finished. He says he won't interfere and will fight on his own. What's the problem? Questioned Sienna. Since when did we start trusting every word a black wizard uttered? asked Eugene. It's not about trusting a black wizard but trusting Balzac Ludbeth, the wizard. Plus I'm curious, what's the connection between devouring demons and fulfilling his wish? Continued Sienna. Having a black wizard contracted with the demon king of incarceration, allied with humans and fighting in the war against demons would be quite a feat, commented Eugene. Is that it? Is that his angle? Sienna took Eugene's offhand remark seriously, and he also began to see its plausibility. To his knowledge, no black wizard had ever openly opposed the demon folks. Maybe his goal is to kill you, Eugene suggested after a pause. If he succeeds in killing me, he'll become a legend indeed. If he succeeds, that is, Sienna said. Her laughter betrayed her complete disregard for such a possibility. I'm less arrogant than her. Eugene had a sudden realization. He knew he wasn't humble. That was a lie. Eugene knew the extent of his own pride and arrogance. However, he also realized that if he could gauge his arrogance to be around 60, Sienna would be at 100. What about the bats? Eugene asked, remembering them suddenly. No contact. They probably can't pass on information like before, answered Sienna. Amelia Merwin's arrival had changed the dynamics. The last report from the bats had been their final one. Before her arrival, they had provided detailed updates on the movements of demons and activities deep within Nahama. It seemed that they could no longer act as spies after Amelia Merwin's arrival in Nahama. Maybe they got caught and were killed, Eugene suggested. I doubt it. They're still watching me, Sienna countered. The identity of the bat was still uncertain, but it was clear that they harbored a strong grudge against Amelia Merwin. Their price for sharing information was a promise that someday Sienna would kill her. We'll wait for their contact. Or perhaps it's no longer necessary to leave them be. The goal for leaving them alone was to lure Merwin out, right? Said Sienna. That's true, but let's leave it for now, suggested Eugene. How long are you planning to stay there? With Merwin in Nahama, shouldn't you be getting ready? Sienna. I am getting ready, replied Eugene. It wasn't as if Eugene had been idling in Giabella Park. He had been preparing himself even before arriving at Giabella Park. I'll leave within this week. His words trailed off as he looked up. A Giabella face was descending from the sky. Eugene grimaced. That wench again, he murmured. Wench? Who's that? Sienna shouted. Before he could answer, the mouth of the Giabella face opened. Clad in a bikini, Noor Giabella dove elegantly into the pool from the entrance. Chapter 446. Remains 2. Any human would be shattered upon impact if they dove from such a height, even while diving in the water. But of course such a fate did not apply to Noor Giabella. She dived flawlessly from dizzying heights into the midst of the wave pool. Fush. The water whirled into a vortex where Noor landed, and soon, a giant whirlpool formed in the middle of the wave pool. Waves generated from the pool's edges rushed towards the vortex, causing the nearby floating rubber boats to rock violently. Kayak! Kayak! Mare and Rhaimira screamed with excitement on the bobbing boat. The pool wasn't the sea, nor was it deep enough to pose any real threat to them. Even if they fell in, they would be in no danger at all. In other words, they were screaming from sheer fun as their boats rocked. Christina and Anise, on the other hand, restrained their screams as before. However, they couldn't hide their expressions. Christina's eyebrows furrowed as she clutched the edge of her boat. The laughing and screaming kids suddenly stopped and clung to each other when they saw the saint's expression. They started to tremble. Ehem. Realizing Mare and Rhaimira were scared, Christina cleared her throat and clasped her hands in front of her chest with a kindly indulgent smile. Her new look radiated benevolence. But the kids, having seen her demonic face moments ago, couldn't laugh anymore. Christina exhaled a long breath. As the whirlpool subsided and the waves calmed, Noor emerged in the center of the pool. She brushed back her drenched hair, her flawless figure and beautiful face only accentuated by her pure white bikini. Though she usually preferred provocative, arousing looks, she wanted to present a pure, clean look this time. Noor did not doubt that she currently looked like a goddess of water. She even considered changing her lower half into a mermaid's tail. Could be quite nice as well. The concept for the next event at Giabella Park will be a mermaid princess, Noor thought, completely inspired. That is, if Eugene doesn't destroy this city. Noor mused with a smile as clear as her current image. She shook her head to scatter the water droplets, creating a miniature rainbow. Though no one was around to admire her display in the private pool, she was content with her current presentation. She wanted to show her pure image to only one man, and he was here. "I asked which wench you were talking about, didn't I?" Sienna repeated. "In this city, which other woman would I address like that?" said Eugene. "The queen of whores," Sienna muttered under her breath. Meanwhile, Noir, who had been standing on the water's surface, began taking soft steps towards Eugene. She left a trail of rainbows behind with each of her steps. "What are you doing here?" Anise stood up from the rubber boat. She passed the shivering children and blocked Noir's path. "I just wanted to say goodbye," said Noir. "Goodbye?" questioned Anise. "Are you not leaving soon?" asked Noir. She gave a smile, but her eyes were fixed solely on Eugene. Anise stood in her way, but Noir only had eyes for Eugene. Eugene was dressed in simple swimming trunks, given their current location. It wasn't anything special, but what did his attire matter? "I'm in a swimsuit too." This realization brought a fresh excitement to Noir. Was it because she was adorning a swimsuit that gave her a look of innocence? Or was it because the flutter in her heart wasn't overripe but rather that of youth? Any other time she might have considered the saint and the kids a bother, but it was different now. "Shall we play together?" Noir asked. Noir's suggestion shocked Anise, but it couldn't compare to her following action. In an instant, Noir was beside Anise, casually linking arms and leaning in. "Are you insane?" shouted Anise. She attempted to pull away but couldn't. Noir held firm while smiling brightly. The sensation Anise felt on her arm was truly horrific, and she felt chills run down her back. Anise raised her hand and attempted to slap Noir with all her strength. However, her attempt failed as Noir vanished before reappearing on the rubber boat. Anise trembled, unable to process the speed of Noir's movements. But her anger was greater than her shock when she saw Noir appear in front of the two children. The two saints felt a surge of anger as they shouted, "Stay away from my children." Fueled by the same anger, both Anise and Christina demanded that Noir stay away from the kids. Their outcry took Noir aback. "My children." The saints weren't all bark and no bite either. Their shout was backed by genuine killing intent. Simultaneously, a flash of light enveloped Noir. "That's too much. I just came to play in the water together," Noir complained, sounding depressed. Although it wouldn't kill her, being hit by divine power would feel rather uncomfortable. Noir pouted as she disappeared from the boat. "What about you, Hamel? Don't you want to join me for some fun in the water and create youthful memories together?" Morgiabella asked with a playful smile. "Why are you asking me when you already know the answer?" retorted Eugene, dismissing the wind spirit. Her eyes skimmed over Eugenie's body as he lounged on the sunbed. She continued with a shrewd smile, "You might give a different answer today." Eugene almost cursed at her aggravating attitude but held back. He noticed the necklace she was wearing. The swaying ring on it matched the one on Noir's left ring finger. Eugene didn't feel like commenting at all. He remembered Noir's fading figure against the dawn light. The smile she gave then had been mixed with tears. It had stirred something in his heart. Eugene sighed as he sat up. He could not help but ponder why she had such a different expression that day, why she had smiled so wistfully, and also why she had cried. "I'm leaving this city in a few days," Eugene finally said, doing his best to avoid discussing the ring. He's conscious of it, Noir realized. It was only for a fleeting moment, but she noticed his gaze. However, Noir did not mention nor flaunt the ring. It seemed best to let the emotions deepen naturally. "Me too," Noir admitted to herself a beat later. Eugene knew it wasn't just he who was conscious of their connection. Noir was entirely aware of it as well. She had not removed the ring or necklace in a month. How would the deepening emotions permeate them? How would these emotions develop, and what flavor would they take when fully matured? Such questions intrigued Noir. She chuckled softly while waving her hand to bring a distant sunbed closer to her. "That makes sense," said Noir. Anise tried to approach them after comforting Mare and Rhaenyra, but Eugene gestured for her to stop. She hesitated but did not retort. Eventually, she retreated with the kids after sensing Eugene's unease. "Your goal was to lure Amelia Merwin out of Revesta, right? Now that she's moved to Nahama, Hamel, there's no need for you to stay here," Noir stated as she slowly reclined on the sunbed. She turned towards Eugene and whispered seductively, "Yet you're still here for a few more days. It's unlike you not to leave immediately, especially since you said you'd leave soon. Saying you will leave in a few more days. Are you not fully prepared yet? What kind of answer do you want to hear? Eugene asked blandly. Even though you're the hero, you couldn't possibly impose a conscription order. The situation doesn't call for such drastic measures. The ones who have vowed to unconditionally support you, the emperor, the pope, and the kings, won't be that desperate either, Noir continued, voicing her thoughts. Eugene remained silent and glared at Noir. With her chin resting on both her hands, Noir leaned forward. Still, your enemy consists of black wizards and demons. Moreover, both politically and diplomatically, Nahama is unpopular and seems like a ripe target for complete subjugation, doesn't it? They could divide the territory afterward, right? Especially Kiel. Since they've clashed with Nahama numerous times, the emperor must be harboring substantial ambitions, said Noir. It was a statement that didn't need refutation. He had begun preparing for war from the caves of Lahanjar. 5 nations, Kiel, Uraz, Arath, Roer, and Shimuan, had agreed to an alliance. Each nation's representative knightly orders would naturally participate, with the Emperor of Kiel even declaring the participation of his royal guard, Alchester Dragonic. As Noir suggested, the Emperor had decided to seize this opportunity to conquer Nahama. Of course, most of Nahama's territory was a desert, and the conquered territory would have to be divided among the allied nations post-conquest. However, the Emperor of Kiel wouldn't miss the chance to conquer a longtime foe. After all, Nahama had been hostile toward Kiel's emperor for hundreds of years. But that was beyond Eugene's concern. His objective was to exterminate Amelia Merwin and the black wizards in Nahama, as well as the demons drawn by the scent of blood. Afterward, he would be satisfied with capturing the Sultan and forcing an unconditional surrender. Noir continued, thanks to this, business people like me are in a bit of a bind. I have various ventures in Nahama, you know. Do you have any idea how much loss a war would incur? If I knew this would happen, I should have expanded into weapons or military contracts. Contrary to her complaining tone, Noir seemed amused. She narrowed the distance between her and Eugene with a sly grin. Among my businesses in Nahama are those for which the night demons stay true to their nature. Don't look at me with those eyes, Hamel. I don't do anything illegal. All of the businesses I run abide by the laws of Helmuth, said Noir. She leaned even closer, whispering, anyhow, so I have a variety of businesses in Nahama, and there's one particularly high-end and, let's say, a respectable establishment catering to a certain clientele. Rumor has it that Nahama is about to enter isolation. Isolation? Inquired Eugene. Yes. They plan to expel all foreign tourists and shut down their warp gates, turning inward. Most emirs have already responded to the Sultan's secret directive, explained Noir. What she was speaking of was highly confidential information, something that should be discussed in whispers. Although there were many spies from various nations including Kiel who were active in Nahama, what Noir was speaking of was information sourced from a high-ranking official or even an emir. It wasn't something shared in bed either, but rather something gathered by a high-ranking night demon from someone's dream. And the content of the secret directive? Eugene inquired, his expression changing subtly as Noir Giabella spoke. It commands to supply soldiers and warriors, leaving only the minimum number of guards, and to conscript at least 10,000 men from their territories, Noir revealed with a hint of excitement. Nahama's national army was already formidable, which included the Sandmancers, assassins, and black wizards of the desert dungeons. They would become even stronger when supplemented by the emir's warriors and private troops. With 15 emirs in Nahama, if all of them complied with the Sultan's directive, the conscription alone would bring in 150,000 soldiers. Noir enjoyed watching the subtle changes in Eugenie's expression. This was a war involving hundreds of thousands of humans, and unlike the last war which pitted humans against demon folks and black wizards, this war would be between regular humans. Noir didn't think much of it. However, she believed it would be different for humans, or so she thought. Eugene's calm expression, despite the slight surprise at the numbers, intrigued Noir. It wasn't as if he was entirely unfazed, but his expression was relatively simple. It felt as if he was only surprised that the number of humans involved in the war was greater than what he initially estimated. But Noir wondered. She knew he understood the gravity of war. The monarchs, knights, soldiers, and mercenaries in this era were born after the curtains of war from the previous era had closed. It was entirely possible that they would be repelled by a war in which hundreds of thousands of individuals would clash and die. But the same didn't hold true for Hamel. Among the humans of this era, he was likely the one who knew war the best. Hamel was a mercenary and a hero. In this era, he was the hero. He was well acquainted with the horrors and dynamics of war. He had deliberately prepared for this war, knowing Nahama would fall as an ally of Helmuth. Killing countless humans on the battlefield and conquering a nation, such things wouldn't be new to Hamel. He would have already prepared and resolved himself for such things. The hero's duty was to save the world, and Hamel's desire was to kill the demon kings. However, Noir was acutely aware of Eugene's compassion. It wasn't as if he was going to be facing demons. Hamel wasn't someone who could simply ignore the lives of hundreds of thousands of humans. While it was true that Nahama's Sultan was siding with Helmuth and Amelia Merwin was behind the act, not all of Nahama's conscripted soldiers were worshippers of the demon kings. Desperate moves, Eugene muttered under his breath with a frown. Noir's curiosity towards Eugene piqued. At the same time, she felt admiration and love for this man's unyielding spirit and commitment to his cause. She clutched the ring on her necklace tightly while staring into the icy golden eyes and then asked, "Don't you wonder if you might need my assistance?" This wasn't a thought she had entertained before. It was an impulsive desire, but Noir did not resist it because it was an impulsive thought born from her deepest desires. Noir yearned to stand alongside Eugene in battle, not to fight each other but to face the same challenges, share the same views and experience the same emotions. Irrespective of whether the enemy numbers in the hundreds of thousands or millions, their scale is insignificant to me. "You know that well, don't you, Hamel?" said Noir. He knew it all too well. In the era of war, excluding the demonic race who had been the single most prolific slayer of humans, the answer was clear without any need for contemplation. Noir Giabella, the queen of the night demons, was the clear winner. 300 years ago, for those advancing through the Devildom, Noir Giabella had absolutely been a living nightmare. Her massacres required no army. In the pitch darkness of the Devildom, the moment her purple eyes flashed, the slaughter was already complete. The most infamous tale was of her causing 30,000 soldiers to perish in the plains, but there were undoubtedly more unspoken atrocities. "If it were me." Noir's voice was moist and alluring, almost seductive in its tone. In a husky, tempting tone she said, "I can prevent unnecessary bloodshed. No matter if they are tens or hundreds of thousands, to me it doesn't matter. I can ensure they face a peaceful end without a drop of blood spilled. Without killing any of them." Eugene remained unswayed. He slowly shook his head. "You wouldn't want that," he replied firmly. Noir laughed softly at his resolute response. She had hoped her words would have tempted him even slightly, but he had not hesitated. The battlefield she desired to share with Eugene wasn't one of peace but of raw, unfiltered war. A battlefield filled with the clash of metal, cries of battle, and the mingling of fear, pain, and unresolved desires. A battlefield where death hovered like a hawk and the stench of blood permeated the place. A place littered with all sorts of emotions and where all sorts of unfulfilled desires evaporated. That was the battlefield where she wanted to see Hamel. She knew what she wished for. She had seen it multiple times 3 centuries ago, but now her desire to see it again was nostalgic and new. If Eugene had accepted her offer, and they had stood side by side on the desert battlefield, Noir would have reveled in making the war as dreadful as possible. Chapter 447, Remains 3. In line with Noir Giabella's expectation, Eugene had no desire to wage a war of such magnitude with Nahama. He would make a decisive move if it came to it, but the current situation didn't warrant such action yet. Unlike Amelia Merwin, who sought outright warfare, Eugene had multiple strategies at his disposal. Even a simple comparison of forces showed the alliance's superiority over Nahama. Even with Amelia recruiting a significant number of high-ranking demons, the alliance had ample countermeasures and forces. Could all of the participating demons go through the ritual to become demon kings? If such a thing were possible, it would definitely turn the tides of battle in Nahama's favor. However, a transformation into becoming a demon king couldn't be achieved with simple desire or effort. Ued Lionheart was the first to attempt the ritual. He did not need to prepare many things for the ritual. The dark spirit within him, the remnants of a former demon king, and his Lionheart lineage had proved sufficient. Edmund Kodrith's preparation for the ritual had been far more extensive in terms of the time it took and the requirements. It had required living sacrifices, the abundant mana of Samar Forest, the world tree's ley lines, and even the dark power of the demon dragon Raizakia. Even then, the ritual had not been brought to completion. Edmund Kodrith had resorted to elevating the quality of the souls of the sacrifices through warfare frenzy as a workaround. It was obvious that the demons mistook Iris' sudden transformation into a demon king as a sign that they, too, could easily achieve this feat. However, for a demon, becoming a demon king without the proper qualifications required many things. Simply put, merely sacrificing innumerable lives would not be sufficient. To make even one demon into a demon king would require a method similar to Edmund's, which involved elevating souls through the frenzy and madness of war. Nahama lacked the unique attributes of Samar Forest. As such, while Edmund used tens of thousands of indigenous people as sacrifices, Amelia would need to prepare several times more. Amelia had only been in Nahama for a few days. It was impossible for her to have conducted a Demon King ritual in such a short time. She would need to incite a full-scale war to even attempt the ritual, and this would, in turn, give Eugene various options once a standoff at the front lines took place. Although he could definitely engage in a frontal battle with Amelia, Eugene's primary aim wasn't to do so. Instead, he hoped to launch a surprise attack from the rear. He could fly with Sienna or ride Rhaenyra to unleash breath attacks. He could end the war by eliminating the demons, Amelia, and capturing the Sultan. However, Eugene didn't fully believe things would go as smoothly as planned. Ideals were simply just that, ideals. "Are you done talking? Then leave," Eugene said dismissively. Moore frowned at his blunt response. "Really, that's just so rude of you to speak that way. And I didn't come here just to talk about this." Eugene was so brazen and ungrateful. Moore shot a playful glare at Eugene. "As embarrassing as it is to say, Hamel, I came because I wanted to see you," she said. Eugene rolled his eyes at her flippant remark. So what? It wasn't the first time he had heard such nonsense from Noir. Eugene didn't even bat an eye after hearing her words. How could he treat her like this even after she provided him with crucial information? Well, in truth, she didn't feel resentful or disappointed at all. "I mean, although I came here because I wanted to see you, it wasn't just on a whim either. There's a reason I came here," Noor added. "So what?" Eugene said apathetically. "Aren't you curious?" Noor asked desperately while pushing her face closer to Eugene, and Eugene kicked the sunbed under her with a derisive face. Despite his evident distaste for her, Noor did not seem to care. She moved even closer to him. Although Eugene wasn't curious at all, he knew that Noor wouldn't leave him be until he asked. "And what was the reason you wanted to see me?" Eugene finally asked. His cheek twitched in apparent annoyance. Noor immediately gave a satisfied smile upon hearing Eugene's question. "I had a dream," Noor revealed. "A dream?" asked Eugene. He was caught off guard. He wasn't privy to the fact that night demons didn't dream in the true sense. "Yes," answered Noir. "And what was it about?" Eugene questioned. Even so, despite his ignorance, Eugene felt intrigued by her answer. He knew dreams possessed significance. After all, he had also first accessed Agarotha's memories in his dreams. "I wonder," Noor answered. Although she did not remember, she was left with the feeling of wanting to see Hamel. As such, it was probably related to him. She had been hoping that a meeting with him would provide her with some clarity and bring back more than the soft, lingering emotions she was left with. But "I don't remember," Noor admitted. She still couldn't remember the contents of her dream. However, despite its elusive nature, she felt an even deeper emotional connection to the dream. Noor took a step back and observed Eugene's reaction. A lingering faint something, wasn't it? She chuckled softly. Eugene stared at Noir with mounting irritation. Noor Giabella could become engrossed and enjoy the lingering emotions of her unrecalled dream. However, Eugene found all of this too sudden and vague. His expression soured as he stood up from his seat. "Where are you going?" Noor asked. "It seems you won't leave, so I will," Eugene replied, clearly uninterested in prolonging the conversation. "But those kids would want to play longer, won't they? Hamel, won't you think about the children's feelings?" Noor protested in an attempt to keep him there. "I've considered their feelings until now, so they should consider mine sometimes," Eugene retorted, not easily swayed by her argument. And what about my feelings, Hamel? I came here because I wanted to see you. Noir suddenly stopped herself. She stared at Eugene for a moment with wide eyes, then tilted her head in confusion. Huh? Noir's lips curled up and her cheeks twitched. She quickly got up from her sunbed saying, No, Hamel, you don't need to leave. I just remembered something I had to do. What? Eugene asked, perplexed. If possible, I would like to see you one more time before leaving the city. You might not want it, but I'd like to at least say goodbye. Oh, and about what I said earlier, think it over, Noir said swiftly, winking at Eugene. I really do plan to help you in the war against Amelia Merwin. With those words, Noir quickly turned around. Instead of leaving on the Giabella face as she arrived, she vanished into the mist. She didn't bother explaining the current situation. She had no intention of doing so, and she was in a hurry. To be more precise, she was irritated. What is it? Noir thought. The giant city lay in Noir's palm. If there was something out of place, something new, she could immediately sense it. It was the same now. She sensed an alien presence suddenly appearing on the outskirts of the city. A demon? No, that wouldn't have been surprising or special. Countless demons roamed the outskirts of the city in search of something to eat. But such creatures were unimportant. The fact that the intruder caused her to make an immediate move meant that it was an existence that bothered her. That already made the intruder a special existence. The intruder was unfamiliar and it bothered her. Noir mulled over the identity of the intruder as she flew across the city sky. You, Noir shouted. When she arrived at the residential area on the city's edge, which was almost completely devoid of tourists, she found the man standing there alone. The man's appearance was not exactly as it was 300 years ago. He lacked his scars and was in a different attire. However, such minor differences wouldn't make him unrecognizable. How could she forget? She had never forgotten his face, the man she first fell in love with, Hamel of Extermination. Noir pondered what emotion to display. She knew the identity of the entity. He was Amelia Merwin's pet, a death knight created by implanting a false soul in Hamel's corpse. His personality had been formed using Hamel's memories. But the being could no longer be called a death knight. Noir had seen it in Revester a year ago. It had barely survived as a hint of a soul without a physical body. The entity had been in the process of being intertwined with the power of destruction. It wouldn't have surprised her if he had dissolved at any moment. But it seemed he had not disappeared. Instead, he had become anew. It didn't come to her as a complete surprise. She had entertained a slim possibility of its revival and even a hint of hope. Noir had been intrigued by the Hamel-like persona the Spectre maintained, although it was a brutal thing for the Spectre. She had wondered if the Spectre could overcome its grim fate if he continued to thrash without despair, just like Hamel. She had pondered the possibility of it overcoming the extreme situation it was put in without perishing. And he had met her expectations, or rather, he had surpassed her expectations. However, Noir felt a strange repulsion towards this being, so she pondered what emotion to display. Should she act as if he were Hamel, her beloved, or... Hamel, what are you doing here? She asked. Drop the act. I can see right through it, the Spectre said. His lips twisted in response to Noir's question. Oh my, Noir said. She ceased her contemplation at that response. It seemed there was no need for pretense. So she followed up with a question. What happened? Or rather, when did you start to notice? Is there any reason I should answer that? The Spectre asked. If you don't wish to, I can't force you, but personally I'm curious. Last time I saw you, you believed yourself to be Hamel, didn't you? Questioned Noir. Instead of pretending, she displayed her true emotions. Noir did not bother to hide her discomfort and disdain towards the Spectre. A fake Hamel. Alien and repulsive. Yes, that's it. The dark power of destruction, Noir thought, shuddering internally. However, the disdain she felt was different from what she felt towards beings like Alfiro. That's why she hadn't realized it immediately. Noir glared at the Spectre while waiting for a response. It wasn't just the difference in dark power. This presence, this intimidation. It felt like her skin was tingling, and deep in her heart, her instincts were recoiling. Even if his existence was mixed and distorted with the power of destruction, is it to this extent? Noir pondered. He was an adversary not to be underestimated. Noir rarely came across such formidable opponents. Looks like you don't plan to answer, said Noir. She snorted and shrugged when she heard no answer from the specter. Why are you here? With Amelia Merwin. I see. If you've become aware of your existence, have you broken free from Amelia's shackles? Eugene Lionheart, the specter suddenly said. Is he still in this city? This time it was Noir's turn to remain silent. She couldn't precisely discern the intent behind that question. With anyone else she would have used her demon eye of fantasy to read their mind. But her instincts warned her not to try such a tactic with this being. The sensation was similar to when she looked into the Temple of Destruction and saw Vermouth Lionheart chained inside. She felt that rashly showing a dream might cause her own downfall. He knows he's a fake. He must be aware his memories are manipulated. Does he still harbor hatred towards the Lionhearts? Noir thought of the possibilities. The fake believed he had been betrayed by Vermouth and his comrades, thus harboring hatred towards the Lionheart family. Maybe the hatred isn't about the memories, Noir thought. She considered the current situation from a different angle. This specter had lost its physical form after being defeated by Eugene Lionheart. Perhaps it wasn't harboring hatred born from his manipulated memories, but rather a desire for revenge against Eugene for other reasons. Why are you looking for him? Noir finally asked. If this being wanted revenge on Eugene, should she pave the way? Or stop him? Noir momentarily pondered this dilemma. But it was too rash to decide. What if this being didn't seek revenge on Eugene at all? However, if its self-identity was closer to the actual Hamel, wanting revenge wouldn't be surprising. He's around, I see, commented the specter. He was puzzled by Noir's vague attitude. Even so, it wasn't as if he could clearly assert his purpose in seeking Eugene. It was a situation bound for misunderstandings. The specter didn't know what Noir knew. Did she know Eugene Lionheart was Hamel's reincarnation? He couldn't assume she did. Similarly, Noir couldn't have known he was aware of Eugene's true identity. Did you come to meet him? Noir asked while maintaining her distance. I just came to check if he's still here, answered the specter. Your answer is vague. After confirming his presence, what then? Will you go to meet him? Asked Noir. Noir considered pressing more forcefully as she slowly unleashed her dark power. Boom. Her power expanded rapidly and put pressure on the space around her. However, the specter stood firm. He stared back at Noir without flinching. Noir Giabella has shown favor towards Eugene Lionheart several times, the specter recalled. He was aware of the scandals involving Noir and Eugene in this city. But the Hamel he knew would never be close to someone like Noir. He didn't consider the possibility of her having taken Eugene captive with her demon eye of fantasy. The saint was with him, and he could not fathom the demon eye of fantasy being capable of breaking through Hamel's formidable mental strength. Does this whore see me as an enemy of Eugene? Is that why she shows hostility? The specter guessed. He had no intention of clashing with Noir. Like with Amelia Merwin, only Hamel had the right to kill this whore. His reason for coming to this city was, as he said before, to check if Eugene was still here. He didn't want to meet Eugene face to face or speak with him. If possible, he just wanted to observe him from a distance. From how Noir was acting, it seemed Eugene was still in Giabella City. That was enough for him. Without another word to Noir, he stepped back. What? Noir asked, confused. Even though she had not shifted her gaze, the specter's figure suddenly vanished. Where had he gone? Noir blinked several times as she scanned the surroundings and the whole city for the specter. He was nowhere to be found. The specter had disappeared from Giabella City. Chapter 448, Remains 4. While in Babel, the specter faced defeat at the hands of the demon king of incarceration. He yearned for death, yet he found himself denied even that. As the demon king of incarceration said, he wasn't a deity. He was a demon king. Instead of fulfilling the specter's desperate wishes, he offered only mockery and scorn. The specter stood on the brink of despair. He wandered about aimlessly after he was cast out from Babel. He was at a loss and felt lost, not knowing what to do next. If he truly desired death instead of seeking answers, he could end his own life. Weren't you seeking death? But a hollow death was not what he sought. You are a lump of contradictions. The specter had found himself unable to respond to the whispered question of the demon king of incarceration. It wasn't because he didn't know the answer. Rather, he knew it too well to respond. The specter was acutely aware of his own contradictions more than anyone else. He desired death while rejecting suicide. He loathed the idea of a meaningless demise. To die for something for someone. That was the kind of death he yearned for. He despised a worthless and miserable end. Even by his own admission, it was greedy and shameless, yet he sincerely longed for such a death. Like Hamel, the spectre realized. Hamel was mocked for being stupid in the fairy tale, but wasn't his end heroic? Hamel was always in conflict with his comrades. Stupid Hamel. Violent Hamel. But he loved his companions. Even when he was wounded and bleeding, he didn't flee but sacrificed himself for them. Hamel's death had not come as a result of his comrades' betrayal. Instead, he had sacrificed himself for them. In his final moments, Hamel regretted not being honest to his comrades while in the arms of his beloved companions. Sienna, I really liked you. Was that really true? The spectre retained all of Hamel's previous memories. But the memories of his dying moments were manipulated by Amelia Merwin. However, more manipulation and deletion of his memories would have resulted in a less complete formation of Hamel's identity in the spectre. In other words, it was highly likely that the memories he possessed before his ascent to Babel 300 years ago truly belonged to Hamel. The spectre continued to ponder silently. Although the spectre didn't believe he'd leave such a testament, recalling Hamel's memories led him to a conclusion. Amid a crumbling world, camaraderie and endless battles, Hamel had never acknowledged or expressed his feelings. However, it seemed he did harbor special feelings for Sienna. Looking back far into the memories, he found many peculiarities with Sienna's behavior as well. It appeared she too harbored and hid tender feelings for Hamel. Anise, pray for me. This testament wasn't hard to accept. In his memories, Anise was occasionally as cold as a snake, but more than any other cleric she sought and longed for salvation, not just for herself but for everyone around. Even if it wasn't Hamel and someone else was dying beside her, Anise would always pray sincerely. Molin, you're the bravest warrior of all. Foolishness and bravery were often separated by a thin line. Even the spectre thought Molin was brave but not without foolish aspects. Vermouth, be sure to defeat the Demon King. The spectre had erased from his memory the image of Vermouth seated and chained in the Temple of Destruction. He also erased from his memory the dark power of destruction that had become his blood, bone and flesh. He even erased the memory of Vermouth allowing such a thing to happen. Indeed, one thing was clear. Even at the very end, Hamel wished to kill the Demon King. Do I wish the same? The spectre mused while standing still. He had fought the Demon King of incarceration in a desperate attempt to find answers. To die. Yet he couldn't reach him. This power, the power of destruction, was not enough to kill the Demon King of incarceration. What, then, was his existence for? What did Vermouth desire by creating him to be this way? What could his living self accomplish now? After being banished from Babel, the spectre plunged into such musings for a while. He revisited Hamel's memories and pondered as himself rather than Hamel. He felt with his bones the emotions like jealousy, envy and greed. He realized the need for a different kind of confirmation and reality check. So he met Noir Giabella. The emotions he felt upon facing her were not much different from before. The spectre harbored hostility and murderous intent towards Noir. These negative emotions belonged to Hamel. He couldn't easily escape these feelings. When facing Noir, the spectre was Hamel. But what about this time? He asked himself. He ignored the churning in his mind as he raised his head to look at the sky. The cloudy sky hung low, and the rain poured down ceaselessly without any signs of stopping. He was in the northern kingdom of Ruhr, located far from Helmuth's Giabella city. It was impossible to traverse such a distance as quickly as the spectre, even if one was using the warp gates. Moreover, the spectre was currently standing at the northernmost point of Ruhr. Before him lay stretches of the mountains that marked the end of the world, Lehanjar. At first he had struggled to leap across vast distances, but now it was familiar to him. It was still difficult for him to pinpoint an exact location to arrive at, but he could transport himself to an approximate location. And he had brought himself to Lehanjar. Brave Molin, the spectre said. Molin was located somewhere in the vicinity. The thought filled the spectre with a fearful anticipation, and his breath turned white and scattered in the cold. He pulled the hood of his robe tighter. Lehanjar was vast. Finding a single human in these enormous mountains was no easy task. He'd take months of aimless wandering or even years before he found his target. However, there was a way to draw him out deliberately. If Molen really was in these mountains, just a slight stir from the specter would bring him out. If he was the brave or rather foolhardy Molen that Hamel remembered, he would definitely show himself as soon as he sensed any dark power stirring in his territory. "I guess I don't even need to draw him out," the specter murmured. Detecting a familiar dark power in this colossal mountain range, especially near the top of the Grand Hammer Canyon, was not a challenging task for the incarnation of destruction. With just a single step, his surroundings changed. The specter suddenly appeared in a new place, just like a supernatural phenomenon. He took a few deep breaths and started walking slowly. Woo-woo. The snow had heavily fallen where he had just been, but here the blizzard was so fierce it was hard to stand. The specter smelled the distinct, unpleasant stench of rotting flesh and blood in the fierce snowstorm. But to him, the scent wasn't offensive or pungent. Rather, it was comforting, familiar, intimate, and welcoming. It was something he had missed. He wanted to deny it, but he could not. Shaking his head, the specter chuckled softly in acceptance. Ha! The stench, not quite foul to him, was tinged with the dark power of destruction. He looked up while clutching his hood to prevent the wind from ripping it off. He saw something hurtling towards him from high above, far away in the distance. It was the head of a monstrous creature, severed and spewing dark purple blood, flying towards the specter. In a fleeting moment, the specter understood what this monster was. He remembered the tale from Molen's homeland, the one regarding the legend of the Buyur tribe that Molen had once mentioned. The monster he saw was the Nur, said to cross over from the world's end. "So it is," the specter murmured. This creature was the Nur. The Nur was fundamentally different from the demons of Ravesta, like Alfiro. The Nur was a true spawn of destruction. However, the specter loathed the kinship he felt with the severed head of Nur. Crush. The head of Nur narrowly missed him and crashed behind him. The ground erupted as if a bomb had detonated, causing snow to spew high into the air. However, the specter stood unflinching and unmoved. He didn't look back. His gaze was still fixated on the distant sky. What expression should he wear to greet what came next? Which of his emotions should he follow? Suddenly, the surrounding snow evaporated into a mist, and the specter's gaze lowered slightly amidst the dense fog. He stood before the founder of the Ruhr Kingdom, the one who secluded himself in these mountains for over 100 years. He stood before the one who decapitated the monster and hurled it away. The brave Molen. The foolish Molen. He stood before the specter. Molen glared down at the specter, and the specter keenly observed what kind of emotions the man harbored in his eyes, perplexity and confusion, and reflected in those large eyes was a man in a hood. What expression should he display? Which emotions should he follow? Such self-centered, arrogant, and greedy deliberations were not for the specter to make. With a bitter smile, he loosened his grasp on his hood. The blizzard swept the hood back, causing his hair to flutter in the wind. He faced Molen with the unscarred face of Hamel. Molen's already wide eyes started trembling. His eyebrows twitched and his bearded face quivered as he opened his mouth. "How dare you?" The emotions of confusion and perplexity that filled his eyes changed instantly. The current Molen was an entirely different person from the Molen Roar in the specter's memory. The specter was unfamiliar with Molen displaying such rage, hostility, hatred, and murderous intent. However, this unfamiliarity was perhaps expected. Molen had every right to feel these emotions. "You dare." Molen spat once again. And so did Sienna, Eugene Lionheart, and the others. They too had every right to feel age, hostility, hatred, and murderous intent toward the specter. It was just as the specter feared. Facing everything related to his fake memories wasn't what he desired. So he had made every attempt to avoid it. He had wished for death at the hands of the demon king of incarceration. However, he knew such an end wouldn't provide the answers he sought. Only now did the specter come close to understanding who he was. "You dare." Molen's boiling anger, hostility, hatred, murderous intent, distorted face, gaze, and outcry, weren't they all proof of who the specter was? "How dare you come before me?" Molen bellowed in rage. Rumble. The mere act of releasing his emotions caused the snow to evaporate into clouds of fog, which was immediately blown away. However, Molen's thunderous yell did more than just disperse the fog. It shook the very space around them. The specter remained silent, for he had indeed come to Molen seeking answers. He realized the selfishness of his own quest. From Molen's perspective, he was witnessing the undead resurrection of a comrade who perished 3 centuries ago. The fact that Molen didn't express other doubts or confusion indicated he might have already heard about the Death Knight from Eugene. Thus, there was no hesitation in Molen's actions. He screamed and extended his hand towards the specter. He tightened his grasp as his hand approached the specter. The specter felt as if he were being grasped. As ridiculous as it sounded, Molen had twisted the very fabric of space by simply clenching the air. He had compressed the space and exerted a numbing pressure on the specter. Most demons would be crushed by this act alone. However, the specter was not an ordinary being. Molen's transcendent attack was born from simple, brute force, and it was possible for the specter to escape from it easily. But he didn't. The specter stood still and faced Molen. He stared into his wide, turbulent eyes filled with anger, hostility, hatred, and murderous intent. And sorrow. I shouldn't avoid this, the specter thought as Molen's fist was almost upon him. He didn't even try to block it. Boom. The explosion seemed to cause the entirety of Lahanjar to shake. Molen appeared baffled after throwing his punch wholeheartedly. He had felt some resistance when he clenched his fist, but he had felt uncertain until the moment his fist made contact. Even now, it didn't feel like his fist had connected. It was a strange feeling. He didn't feel like his fist connected? What did that even mean? Molen's fist was bloodied. He had blown away the specter's body with his attack, and what remained of the specter's body was only his lower half. Why didn't you do anything? Molen gritted his teeth as he spoke. The specter's lower half stood up from the ground as he was perfectly revived. I felt I shouldn't avoid it, the specter said with a hollow laugh. Shouldn't you say? Asked Molen with narrowed eyes. His hair bristled in anger as he asked, Didn't you think you shouldn't come here at all? I did, the specter nodded. But I thought I had to come. Are you mocking me? Molen asked, enraged. Heat emitted from Moron's body as he faced the specter. The longer they confronted each other, the more uncontrollable his emotions became. Molen Roar had been ridiculed as a fool by his comrades since long ago. However, he never took offense to their teasing. He had crossed the line of life and death many times with his comrades. They could call him a fool and it wouldn't matter. But the same didn't hold true for this existence. Even if the entire world considered Molen a fool, this existence could not do the same. Do you know me? Molen demanded. Molen Roar, the specter replied. Molen raised his hand above his head after hearing the specter's response. No. You don't know me, he declared. A flying axe tore through space and landed in Molen's grasp.